Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast. We're back from our second break of the night. We just got finished talking about the top 10 players in the Stanley Cup Final, and now we're talking about how each team in the Stanley Cup Final was assembled. And one team really favored the draft in building their team, and the other team kind of favored trades and free agency and waiver claims here. Of course, we're comparing the Edmonton Oilers to the Florida Panthers. The Edmonton Oilers really have a lot of homegrown talent, and their scouting and draft and development departments really deserve a lot of credit for the Stanley Cup Final run. When you're talking about the Edmonton Oilers, they have 2 first overall picks, and they have 7 first round picks on their roster right now that were all drafted by the Edmonton Oilers. Since 2011, that's the furthest back this goes. A lot of their first round talent has really developed and turned provider for them. In 2011, it was Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who for the longest time looked like a bust, but in year 13 right now in the NHL, he looks like a fantastic player, and really it took him a while to get going, but since he's gotten going, he is amazing. Of course, he was in the middle of that first overall run by the Edmonton Oilers. Taylor Hall, Nugent-Hopkins, and Nail Yakupov going on each end of him. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, you could say, is the best of the 3 here, and I wouldn't argue with you too much. Of course, Taylor Hall has a Hart Trophy, so that's a little bit fair to talk about him, but as longevity goes and as individual and team success goes, I think Ryan Nugent-Hopkins might take the cake from those 3. And then you have Darnell Nurse in 2013. That was their first round pick, or for 7th overall in 2013. I think he was the 2nd defenseman off the board in that draft class. And then it's Leon Draisaitl in 2014 in that star-studded 2014 class with the 3rd overall pick. Connor McDavid, of course, 2015. We know he was the number 1 overall pick in that draft. A fantastic draft that included names like Mitch Marner, Jack Eichel, Sebastian Aho was in that class. A lot of notable names in the 2015 class, and he is still, of course, the best of all of the bunch here. 2018, it was Evan Bouchard with our first round pick. That was 10th overall. Philip Broberg, 8th overall in the first round in 2019, and Dylan Holloway in 2020, 14th overall. So 7 first round picks for the Edmonton Oilers. On the other side, for the Florida Panthers, Anton Lundell, Aaron Ekblad, and Alexander Barkov make up their first round picks on their team. Barkov 2nd overall, Ekblad 1st overall in 2014 in that same class of Leon Draisaitl, and in 2020 it was Anton Lundell as the first round 12th overall pick that they selected. Now for each team, for the Florida Panthers, they don't have a single player that they drafted between the rounds 2 through 7 on their team still, and Edmonton has 3 of them. They have Vincent Desharnais, they have their goaltender Stuart Skinner, and they have Ryan McLeod, who were all their own selections between the rounds 2 through 7. The Florida Panthers don't have any, which is shocking. They've done a lot of trading and done a lot of free agent signings that lead to that no 2 through 7 of their own picks, but it's still mind-boggling either way. And now when we're talking about free agency and waiver claims, this is where the bulk of the Florida Panthers team was made up. We already talked about Gustav Forsling being a waiver claim. He is by far their best acquisition pound for pound as it goes. Gustav Forsling don't have to give up anything, really don't have to sweat about a long contract negotiation either. In 2021, that's when they picked him up. But their free agency signings, the furthest one back is 2019. It's Sergei Bobrovsky for $10 million. Then you have Carter Hagee, they signed from the Tampa Bay Lightning in 2020. Ryan Lundberg in 2020 as well. Nick Cousins in 2022. Both those guys won't be playing on the Florida Panthers. They probably won't be playing for the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup Final, as other guys have stepped up more for the Florida Panthers, but still very impressive free agency signings. And then Nico Mikola in 2023, OEL, and Dmitry Kulikov all in 2023. You also have Evan Rodriguez, Kevin Stenlund, and Anthony Stolarz in 2023 as well, were UFA signings. And then on the waiver claims, you have Gustav Forsling, Josh Mahura, Tobias Bjornfot for the Florida Panthers. Bjornfot and Mahura will probably not be playing in the Stanley Cup Finals, barring injury. And then the UFA signings for the Edmonton Oilers, it's a lot of their depth pieces are UFA signings, and one superstar in Zach Hyman. You saw he was ranked number 8th for my players in the Stanley Cup Final. He was signed in. He wasn't signed in 2021. That's wrong. But he was signed a couple years ago for the Edmonton Oilers. Derek Ryan was signed in 2021. Cody Ceci in 2021. Evander Kane was signed by the Edmonton Oilers. Matthias Janmark a couple of years ago. Calvin Pickard a couple years ago from, I think he came from the Avalanche. Calvin Pickard did. Or he played on the Avalanche sometime in his career. Maybe he came from the Hurricanes when they signed him. Connor Brown and Corey Perry were the two most recent. Of course, Corey Perry being in this offseason, they signed him. And then when you're going for trades, this is also a category where the Panthers kind of elected to stay towards when they were building their roster. Eetu Luostarinen is the furthest back the Florida Panthers go with trade accusations in 2020. Brandon Montour was a trade accusation in 2021. Sam Bennett, Sam Reinhart in 2021 as well. Matthew Tkachuk was in that Jonathan Huberdeau trade in 2022. Steven Lorentz, Vladimir Tarasenko, and Kyle Okposo were in 2024 or 2023. It is very impressive what Bill Zito has been able to do for the Florida Panthers in trades and UFA acquisitions. There's the word, I found it. Very impressive what he's been able to do, kind of working the phones, kind of working the contracts, being able to build this contender from ground up, as it was really from ground up when we looked at this roster in 2018, even as so far back to then where they weren't really competing on the biggest stage. But for the Florida Panthers, you have a lot of kind of big names that are stepping up for them from trades here. Warren Fogle has been a good name for the Edmonton Oilers. Brett Kulak has been important for them. Matthias Ekholm has been important for them. Adam Henrique has been important for them. Sam Carrick has been important for them on trades. So very, they have 6 guys on their team from trades. The Florida Panthers have 8 guys on their team from trades. When it comes to UFA signings, the Florida Panthers have 10 players on their team from trade or from UFA signings, and the Edmonton Oilers have 8. And then the Edmonton Oilers, of course, blow them out of the water with homegrown talent, those first-round picks and those depth picks as well. It shows that you could build a winning roster in multiple ways in the NHL, and no philosophy for building a team is wrong, really. You could build it from the draft, or you could build it from kind of getting established players, whether that's free agency or trades. The Florida Panthers electing to do the latter, and it has definitely worked in spades for them. The worry for the Florida Panthers, of course, is they have a lot of veterans on their team, is how I would put it nicely. Alexander Barkov's getting up there in age. Sam Reinhart is getting up there in age. Sam Bennett's getting up there in age. Vladimir Tarasenko's getting up there in age. Kyle Okposo's getting up there in age. Aaron Ekblad is getting up there in age. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Dmitry Kulikov. I believe Gustav Forsling is... he's 27. Brandon Montour is 30. You have Dmitry Kulikov, who I mentioned earlier, 33. You have Niko Mikkola, who is 28, getting up there. So for a lot of these defensemen and a lot of this Florida Panthers team, it's a lot older than the Edmonton Oilers. That's not going to affect the play on the ice tomorrow or throughout the series, but it definitely could affect them going forward and in future seasons. So that's something to look out for. That's the biggest difference in the two different philosophies. But it is interesting how each team built their roster, and I find that fascinating that both teams were able to build their rosters in completely different ways and get the same result, both of them winning the conference final and both of them going to face off against each other in the Stanley Cup Final. I'm excited for that. That's tomorrow. But with that being said, we're going to take our third break of the night, and when I get back, we're going to be talking about the top storylines for the Stanley Cup Final.